Well, hello, hello. This is Karlyn Borysenko, and you are listening to the Actively Unwoke podcast. So, I just got back from the Libertarian National Convention in Reno, Nevada. And if my voice sounds a little funny, if I sound a little bit congested, it's simply because I came home with a little gift. I got that nice conference crud, convention crud, whatever we want to call it. There was something going around with all the people there. Some people came home with COVID. I had COVID a couple months ago, so I don't think it's that. Colds are still a thing. People can actually just catch a cold when they're traveling and then they're in a room with 1,000 other people for a couple of days. So I think that's what happened. So my voice is a little scratchy. That's just what's going on. I'm kind of getting over that. But I also want to mention before we go into the actual topic today, and I will be doing a future episode on this, is that what happened at the Libertarian National Convention, you have to look it up. Listen, even if you're not a libertarian, even if you think the libertarians are crazy, it is actually quite amazing because what happened last weekend in Reno is that the Libertarian Party became the first large scale organization that I can think of to actually beat back wokeism, to take every woke person that had gotten themselves into a position of leadership within the party. They were all universally voted out in Reno, and a whole new unwoke leadership was elected to run the party moving forward. It's incredibly exciting. Look up the Reno Reset on Twitter if you haven't seen the hashtag yet, or Timcast did a wonderful article and recap of it, and I am going to be covering it on a future show. But I don't want to talk about that right now. I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about why I do not believe the public schools can be saved. And the reason I want to talk about this is less than half an hour ago, at the time of this recording anyway, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, sent out a tweet bragging about how he invested $25 billion in the K through 12 schools in Florida. And as someone who is currently running for governor of New Hampshire on the Libertarian ticket, of course, I cringed when I saw that tweet because I know that that is $25 billion that has been absolutely wasted. $25 billion of Florida taxpayer money. Just basically, Ron DeSantis could have just basically thrown it into an incinerator for all the good that's going to do. And the reason is this: the public schools cannot be saved. No amount of money can save the public schools. No amount of parental rights bills can save the public schools. No amount of anti-CRT bills can save the public schools. Listen, I'm not arguing against legislation to control what the public schools are teaching your kids in any way. I think we should do that. I'm going to explain why. But there is a harsh reality that people need to start to face when it comes to beating back the woke insanity in this country. And that is that the public schools cannot be saved. I'm going to say this again. The public schools cannot be saved. It is not necessarily a problem of the institution, although we could go back at the origins of public education in this country and talk about how they are very literally organizations that are built to mold people into good little obedient servants of the state. But that's actually not the biggest problem. The biggest problem is much more practical. It's the staffing pool. It's the teaching pool. It's the pool of people that are actually being hired to go into the classroom and to run the organizations. The problem is that the people that are inside that pool are completely, totally, unequivocally indoctrinated into the woke ideology. If you look at political donation records, you'll see that teachers, public school teachers, people working for the teachers unions, things like that, over 95% of them donate exclusively to the Democratic Party. Now, when you have an entire profession of people who are indoctrinated into one political ideology, so much so that they're actually giving that political ideology money, then that is not something that is a fixable problem. Let me try to make this extremely tangible because I know that many of you listening to this, you have kids in the public schools, or you have kids that will someday go to the public schools, or maybe you just always thought, never questioned that as an option. I used to be one of you. I really did. I was one of those people who said, we need to invest in the public schools to make sure the teachers have what they need. What I didn't understand at that time is that the teachers are the problem. The teachers are the ones who are teaching your children as young as 4 years old this far left progressive ideology, and they are teaching it to them at an early enough age where it is almost going to be impossible from a psychological perspective to show them any other way, because anything that you teach a person around before or around the time they turn 8 years old is pretty much cemented in their brain. It's just the way the brain works and the brain evolves. The things that this is why you teach languages early on to kids instead of waiting until high school. If you start them learning languages early on in their life, they're much better able to speak that language, pick up on that language, become fluent in that language. It's the same thing with anything else you teach them. And that's why the woke left have done such a good job at getting their hooks into the public education system, because they knew that was their pipeline to creating their little Marxist utopia in society. So let me try to make this really tangible for you. Over 95%, and I think 95 is low, but let's just leave a little bit of wiggle room for doubt. Over 95% of the teachers that are currently teaching in the public school system in the United States went to a college of education, the place where they learned how to be a teacher. They went to a college of education in which they were educated directly into the far left woke ideology as a part of their curriculum in the college of education. And not only were they taught that, but the people training them, the people teaching them, the professors in those colleges of education were also they themselves indoctrinated into that woke ideology. And so the problem with the public schools becomes we do not have unwoke teachers in order to staff them. We can pass all the anti-critical race theory bills that we want, and I encourage that. I think it's a good idea. It slows them down. We can pass all the curriculum transparency bills that we want to make sure that parents have access to the curriculum of what's being taught in the classroom. We can pass all the anti-grooming laws that we want, just like Ron DeSantis did in Florida. All these bills are fine, but what they do not do is fix the staffing pool. It is the staffing pool that is the problem. Not only do we need to retrain an entire generation of public school teachers to be able to fill those educator roles in the classroom, but we also need to retrain an entire generation of teacher trainers. So that means if we passed every unwoke law in every state in the country, it still wouldn't fix the problem. Because the reality is that once the teacher shuts the door to the classroom, they're going to teach what they want. We know this. Teachers have flat out said they have signed their name publicly to online petitions. They post TikToks, they post tweets. They will tell you, I am not going to obey the law. I'm going to teach your kids what I want to teach them, because the teachers that your kids have consider your kids to be theirs. They consider themselves to be the parents of those children in those classrooms, and they do not feel as though they are partners with actual parents. In fact, what they're saying is that the actual parents of these students are creating unsafe environments. And the only safe spaces that these kids have is their public school teachers, who are indoctrinating them into a far leftist ideology as early as pre-kindergarten. So even if we fired every single public school teacher today, who would fill those roles? Where are we getting more teachers? They don't exist. And that is precisely because the colleges of education are the ones that have used the woke ideology, have delivered the woke ideology through the curriculum that teachers are required to take in order to become teachers. And then guess what? Then look at the licensure requirements. If you've never looked at the teacher licensure requirements in your state, just Google them, look them up. I'll use Illinois as an example because Illinois, in their teacher licensure requirements, literally say that teachers have to take regular courses in anti-racism, in equity, in all of the far left woke ideology. That is a requirement to be a teacher in the state of Illinois. And so we can talk about solutions to these problems, changing licensure requirements, all that stuff. But the fact remains is that the staffing pool is not going to change anytime soon. It doesn't matter how many bills are passed. It doesn't matter how many licensure requirements are changed. It doesn't matter if we dissolve every college of education overnight. None of that matters because the damage has already been done, and it was done decades ago. We are now in a position of having to dig out from one of the biggest problems in fighting back against the woke. We do not have an unwoke teaching pool. It doesn't exist in this country. And so when you're talking about fixing the public schools, who are you going to staff them with? Because guess what? It's not just the teachers, right? It's also the administrators, because who becomes administrators but former teachers? So not only do you have to find unwoke teachers for every public school teaching position in the country, you also have to find unwoke administrators. And on and on and on. This is a problem. I'm an organizational psychologist. I know how to fix organizations when they become broken. This is a problem that is not fixable because the staffing pool is not there. And it would not take 10 years, it would not take 20 years. We are talking about at least 2 entire generations in order to build up a new staffing pool that will be large enough to fix the public schools. 2 generations at an absolute minimum. And I say that as a minimum because I think that it would frankly require a lot of luck in order to get the staffing pool built up in 2 generations. So we don't have the people to do it. And so while I know that it is a very scary idea for a lot of people to say we need to defund the public schools, there is a reason for that. It's not just because it's a spicy thing to say on Twitter. It's not just because it gets the woke left all riled up. It is simply a practical reality that they cannot be saved because the staffing pool is not there. So then how do we do this? Do we continue to invest more money in public education? I don't think that's the answer. I think what we need to start doing is changing the culture in this country to help people to understand that this is a system that is unsavable. Now, there are many different ways that we can educate kids outside of the public school system. Guys, just so you know, like the public school system has not actually always existed. Parents were educating their kids before that. And by the way, if you think that charter schools or private schools are the answer to this problem, again, the charter schools and the private schools are pulling from the same teaching population. It is the same staffing pool. So that while I do believe there is a significantly limited amount of success that charter schools and private schools can have, the fact of the matter is it doesn't change the composition of the teaching pool. The same teachers that teach in public schools would love a cushy job at a nice private school. They are exactly the same teachers. Taking them out of one environment and putting them into another is not going to change what they're teaching. We need to start looking at other solutions. We need to start heavily investing in homeschooling, or you can create independent like pods of kids that meet and do activities together, getting together with other homeschooling parents. We need to start, in my ideal world, I actually would love someone like an Elon Musk just to make a massive investment in entrepreneurship that is strictly dedicated to making the idea of homeschooling more accessible to more people. Because the reason that most parents don't homeschool is not that they are in love with the public schools, because they're not. It's that they think that they can't do it. They don't feel like they're up to the task. They feel like it's overwhelming. Maybe there are state regulations that are getting in their ways. There are a lot of reasons why people choose to send their kids to the public schools that are not that they think the public schools are providing the very best education. And I understand all of those things. There are a lot of things that need to fall in place in order to get society to accept an educational model that is outside of the public school system. But the very first thing we need to do is come to grips with the fact that it is not a savable system. And even though that's scary, And even though that means we don't exactly know how we're going to right now, right this second, educate the amount of people that we need to educate, that doesn't mean there's not a solution to this problem. There is a solution, but people need to start proactively looking for that solution. They need to start proactively looking for and even creating resources for people who are homeschool parents or are experts in homeschooling. We need to start making those resources a lot more accessible and a lot more attainable to a wider variety of people. I don't know how we do that right this second. All I know is that I want to show as many people as possible that the public schools cannot be saved. I'm currently running for governor in New Hampshire on the Libertarian ticket. And one of the things that I've said that I will do if I am elected, and I know that that's a long shot, let's be honest. But if I am elected on day one, I would sign an executive order putting a camera in every public school classroom in the state of New Hampshire that would provide a live feed to every single parent who has students in that classroom to show them exactly and precisely what the teachers are teaching their students. Because this is the first step. We made so much progress during the pandemic because for the first time, parents could look over their kids' shoulders at the Zoom they had at the dining room table and say, "What is this crazy nonsense that you're learning? What's going on here? Why are you learning that all cops are bastards in public schools?" And yes, they are learning that. And they're learning things that are way, 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 way worse than that. Listen, let me give you some numbers real quick. About 36% of students graduating from the public schools will graduate knowing how to read at a 12th grade level. Less than one third of students graduating from the public schools will learn how to write at a 12th grade level before they graduate. And I think it's around 26% of students graduating from the public schools will be able to do math at a high school level before they graduate. And the reason, and all that's from the National Report Card, by the way, it's online. You can look up the numbers and verify for yourself. But the reason that all these things are happening is because the teachers are no longer teaching the core subjects of reading, of writing, of math, of history, of science, of art, of drama. They're not teaching any of those things. They're teaching social justice. They're teaching activism. You can actually go online and watch webinars where they teach teachers how to teach activism in their classes as early as elementary school. I've done it on my YouTube channel. This is content that is literally available to you right now. Just go to my YouTube channel, look up Spy Stream, look up Happy Hour. You can do it on my main YouTube channel, youtube.com/Dr. Karlyn Borysenko. You can do it on my second YouTube channel, youtube.com/actively unwoke. All of the content's right there. You can see exactly and precisely that I am telling you the truth about what the teachers are doing to your kids. And that's why we should absolutely not be doing what Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida and investing 25 billion additional dollars in public education. It is throwing that money away because the teachers are going to take that money and use it to indoctrinate your students because it is not a money problem. It is not an institutional problem. It is a staffing problem. That's why the public schools can't be saved. If you do not have a pool of unwoke teachers and administrators to replace the current staffing with, then there is nothing that we can do about this situation. Someone's got to teach the kids if the public schools are going to continue to exist. And if we don't have unwoke people, and I'm not saying following any political, when I say unwoke, by the way, I don't mean following a far right political ideology to balance out the far left ideology. Public school teachers shouldn't be teaching any political ideology, whether they're on the left or the right or the center or libertarian or politically homeless or Green Party member or a Pirate Party member. And yes, that is actually a real thing. It doesn't matter what their political ideology is. They shouldn't be teaching it in the public schools. So I'm not suggesting we go from one extreme to the next. I'm just suggesting that we do not have a staffing pool of people who are willing to go in to public schools at the K through 12 level and teach things like reading and writing and math in the way that they should be taught. So that's the problem that we have to overcome. And by the way, I want to mention, I understand why some of you might be nervous about the idea of putting a camera in every public school classroom. But if you pick up a copy of my book, Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against Woke Insanity in Your Life, I do actually have a whole section of the book that talks about cameras in classrooms, that lays out all the objections and all the counters to cameras in classrooms. And I understand why people would be nervous about that. However, we also exist in a reality where public schools are grooming your kids and teaching them literal sex and literal pornography as early as 4 years old. 4 years old, they're teaching your kids about sex. I'm not making that up. It's all documented. And so, while I understand that people might have reservations about putting a camera in a public school classroom, I assure you that that is a much lesser evil than teaching 4-year-olds about how to have sex without their parents knowing what's being taught. And that is quite literally what is happening right now in public schools across the country. So take some time with this idea. Really think about it. Dude, I know I had to think about this idea a lot. I'm not just doing this willy nilly. I have been thinking about this for 2 solid years, but it is the only way forward. The public schools cannot be saved. We must defund public education. We must make homeschooling and other educational alternatives more accessible. And I dearly hope that some exceptionally rich entrepreneur comes in and starts trying to fund solutions to the accessibility regarding homeschooling problem that we have, because the more accessible and attainable we can make homeschooling for the average parent, the quicker the public schools are going to be defunded. All right, guys, that's all I have for this episode. Again, you can pick up a copy of my book, Actively Unwoke, The Ultimate Guide for Fighting Back Against the Woke Insanity in Your Life. You can pick that up at activelyunwoke.com. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, your independent booksellers. If it hasn't been canceled yet, I don't know. But guys, that's all I have for right now. Take care, and we'll see you soon.